You may have heard that for a while now, House Republicans and many Republicans across the board have been advocating for the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, to be impeached, and he should not be in office, is their position on Alejandro Mayorkas, based on the Department of Homeland Security's handling of the southern border under the Biden administration. And the talking points they put out there to justify this effort are absurd, and we'll focus in on one of them now. So I have to preface all this by saying, then we'll get into Lauren Boebert pushing for this in a moment from a recent hearing where she's kind of a little bit fact-checked on one of these talking points. But of course, there is a massive issue, which will be the subject of this segment, with fentanyl deaths, with it coming across the southern border, all of that. But the reason for that is not because of this narrative that Republicans push about there being an open border and Alejandro Mayorkas isn't enforcing laws at the border and isn't trying to address this issue. I'll talk about the facts on fentanyl, on this subject. What is the Biden administration doing to try to address it? Is it something that you could attribute to Biden policy, or is it not? We'll get to all of that. But the facts is not the interest, not the focus of House Republicans. It's more just a political effort to attack the Biden administration and thus Alejandro Mayorkas. So here was from the end of 2022, we started hearing this talking point. Lauren Boebert saying this.
On Mayorkas's watch, more than 14,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized in fiscal year 2022 at our southern border. That is an all-time record high.
So this is one of the things we'll focus on in this segment, is the topic of clearly the Biden administration is doing a bad job. This is what we'll hear from them, of handling the southern border, or doesn't care about fentanyl coming across, because large numbers have been seized. Large amounts have been seized of fentanyl at the southern border. Wait, wouldn't that indicate that clearly they do care and are trying to prevent it from getting in the country, because huge amounts are being seized? And I'm about to show you Dr. Rahul Gupta, who is the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, saying actually you could attribute a good bit of the increase we've seen of seizures to better technology. That's his viewpoint. And this was that interaction during a recent hearing with Lauren Boebert as well.
We have more seizures today than we have had at any time.
Do you believe that's because more is coming over than at any other time?
I think we have better technology. I think we have more committed men and women in uniform.
So again, we will get to the facts. We have seen an increase in a very relevant metric when it comes to this, which is drug overdoses due to fentanyl. And so it's not to say we haven't seen an uptick, an explosion of this illegal industry. We have, but clearly there's an effort to address that. And the Biden administration can't control the fact that we have seen, long before Biden got into office, a consistent uptick in fentanyl coming into this country and a consistent explosion of this illegal industry. All he can control, and all his the people under him can control, is the policies they use to address this reality. And just quickly, before we dive into more details, here's one more moment from the same hearing with Representative Dan Goldman.
I guess I'm a little troubled by tweets such as this from hold it up, please, a colleague of mine from New York, who criticizes President Biden because during his administration, more than 34,000 pounds of deadly fentanyl has been seized at the southern border. That means that it did not come into our communities, right?
Yes, Congressman, if the assertion is we should let all of this come in and kill Americans, I will disagree with that every single day and every single minute.
Right, we're trying to stop the fentanyl.
So the talking point just does not make sense from the GOP of Biden is horrible and Alejandro Mayorkas is horrible because there are large numbers of seizures of fentanyl at the southern border, because that's the recourse that the Biden administration can do. That's what they can be up to. That's how they can address this issue, is to try to seize as much as possible. And what we just heard there from Dr. Let's see, now I'm blanking on the Gupta. There we go, Dr. Gupta. he is saying some of that can be attributed to us working harder to seize, to stop. And that is what we should be doing. So why you're trying to then turn around and impeach, and then the idea would be removed from office, Alejandro Mayorkas, is pretty absurd. So first thing on this, if you take a look at the chart I'm putting up on screen, you notice that starting back in the title of the chart is fentanyl deaths have increased every year since 2012. And this is a very relevant metric because it's not seizures, which you don't exactly know, is that better seizing or is that more fentanyl, or both? Probably, definitely both. This gives you a sense of the impact of the fentanyl, and clearly larger numbers, larger amounts getting across, contributing to these overdose deaths. And fentanyl is a driving force within our opioid epidemic. And so you can see here, it's just been shooting up all throughout part of the Obama administration, Trump administration, and then continuing in the Biden administration. There's something larger going on. And it's not to say it shouldn't be addressed. It should. This is a crisis. You saw that in 2020 on this chart, 70,000 deaths from fentanyl. Or primarily from fentanyl, and it's continued throughout the Biden administration, up and up and up, and that is horrible. But we need honest discussions about how to solve that, not just politically motivated bashing of whoever's currently in power, in this case, President Biden. And so then getting to what is Biden doing within the context of the power he has as president to address this fact? Is he completely giving up on border policy? Is he opening the border? No, of course not. And I can't go through all of the bullet points I have in the past about how the border is not open in this segment. We'll just focus on what is being pushed for from the Biden administration to address specifically fentanyl overdoses. But you can see here, put out by the White House, Biden administration announces new actions and funding to address the overdose epidemic and support recovery. And it goes through specifics. I'll try to throw this down the description box below if you want to read further, including $1.5 billion for all states and territories to address addiction, the opioid crisis, and $104 million to expand substance use treatment, and on it goes, announcing additional funding for law enforcement officials on the front lines of the overdose epidemic. We also know that the resources being allocated to the border have stayed at similar levels as the Trump administration. He's not defunding our border security as Republicans allude to, and he's actually pushing for larger increases. President Biden's budget strengthens border security, as this White House press release also notes, enhances legal pathways, and provides resources to enforce our immigration laws. And he is looking to enhance border security and immigration enforcement by a significant amount, including $25 billion for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, an increase of almost $800 million over the 2023 enacted level when controlling for border management amounts. And then another thing, just quickly here, focusing in specifically on fentanyl, they're also attempting to include $46.1 billion in Biden's fiscal year 2024 budget for the National Drug Control Program agencies to address this very problem. So clearly the talking point of it's being ignored, or it's being supported, or the Secretary of Homeland Security is not following through on his duty to care about this problem, or Biden's not following through on his duty to care about this problem, it's just not accurate. There's not a basis in fact. There is a basis in fact for this being a significant issue. But similar to how we talk about with so many things on this show, when there are real problems, we need real discussions about those problems so that we can get to real solutions. But if you're coming at it with a dishonest lens, or you're trying to put a dishonest lens in front of your followers' eyes, then it's impossible for us to really craft meaningful solutions. And within that context, it's really hard to address these problems. So my call to Republicans is stop lying about these subjects, stop putting out these dishonest talking points, and let's actually attempt to solve the problem. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.